Good afternoon. We're back again with more War and Peace. Again, I'm Charlotte, and spending some quality quarantine time with Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. I figured have the time to finally crack this bad boy open. If you weren't here last time, I just read the very first section with the degree of terror at all the French that was in it. I like to think I know some French, but definitely not that much, as friends of mine who do speak French were quick to point out and laugh at me about. And I got some explanation from a friend in New Zealand who also, among other things, did give me this amazing shirt that I have slightly destroyed but still love. Hey, Yulia. Yulia speaks Russian and was saying that it was very common to speak French in Russia. I think she said in the 17th and 18th century. Could be wrong. Definitely at least the 1800s. But speak French in Russia if you were wealthy or upper class. So a little bit of history on that. So Leo Tolstoy, though, is pulling no punches. I thought it would just be tough French or Russian names that I'd have to worry about. And here he has paragraphs of French for me to stumble through. So my apologies. I think there's less French in this next section. Basically, I'm reading till my arm gets tired of holding this book. So there's that. We'll also read a little bit more today. And then after today, we'll stay tuned until Monday for more. Recap last time. Just an opening scene of Anna Pavlovna, who's like a socialite, having a meeting with... I was offered some pizza. It's for me, but it's not for me right now. Anyway, so Anna Pavlovna having a little soiree at her place with a Prince Vasily, who has 3 kids that he doesn't really care that much about. And Anatoly is his youngest and a bit of a troublemaker. She doesn't like him, so they're trying to set him up with some rich guy's daughter just so he can be out of his dad's hair. That's all the excitement we've had so far, other than my horrible French. Also, I've noticed there is some footnotes for the French, so I could alternately read the English translation of the French if you guys wanted me to. So you probably have to jump in the comments and say, okay, enough with your French. Also, what are they saying? And then maybe I'll just read the French or the English translation of the French in place of. But I feel like that might mess up the flow and also lose a little bit of the flavor of the novel. But then again, it's also nice to know what people are saying. But, a little bit of mystery. Either way, I'm going to read it as is right now without any of the translations. I'll get through hopefully a part or two. And before we call it a day. So this is Volume 1, Part 1, Section 2. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Anna Pavlovna's drawing room gradually began to fill up. The high nobility of Petersburg came. People quite diverse in age and character, but alike in the society they lived in. Prince Vasily's daughter, the beautiful Helene, came to fetch her father and go with him to the fête at the ambassador's. She was wearing a ball gown with a monogram. Evidently. The young little Princess Bolkonsky, known as La Femme la plus séduite de Petersburg, also came. Married the previous winter, she did not go into high society now for reason of her pregnancy, but did still go to small soirees. Prince Hippolyte, Prince Vasily's son, came with Mortemart, whom he introduced. The Abbé Morio also came, and many others. Have you seen yet, or have you made the acquaintance of ma tante? Anna Pavlovna said to the arriving guests, and led them quite seriously to a little old lady in high ribbons who had come sailing out of the next room as soon as the guests began to arrive. Calling them by name, slowly shifting her gaze from the guest to ma tante and then walked away. All the guests performed the ritual of greeting the totally unknown, totally uninteresting, and totally unnecessary aunt. With sad, solemn sympathy, Anna Pavlovna followed their greetings, silently approving of them. To each of them, ma tante spoke in the same expressions about his health, her own health, and the health of Her Majesty, which, thank God, was better that day. And those who went up to her, showing no haste for propriety's sake, left the little old lady with a feeling of relief after the fulfillment of a heavy obligation, never to approach her again all evening. The young Princess Bolkonsky came with handwork in a gold-embroidered velvet bag. Her pretty upper lip, with its barely visible black mustache, was too short for her teeth, but the more sweetly it did open, and still more sweetly did it sometimes stretch and close on the lower one. As happens with perfectly attractive women, her flaw, a short lip and a half-opened mouth, seemed her special personal beauty. Everyone felt cheerful looking at this pretty future mother full of health and liveliness, who bore her condition so easily. To old men and to bored, morose young men, it seemed that they themselves came to resemble her, having been with her and spoken with her for a time. Anyone who talked with her and saw her bright little smile at every word and her gleaming white teeth, which showed constantly, thought himself especially amiable that day, and that is what each of them thought. The little princess, waddling, went around the table with small, quick steps, her bag of handwork hanging on her arm, and cheerfully straightened her dress, sat down on the sofa near the silver samovar, looking as though everything she did was a partie de plaisir for her and for everyone around her. J'apporte mon ouvrage, she said, unclasping her reticule and addressing them all together. Look, Annette, ne me juge pas un mauvais tour. She turned to the hostess. Vous m'avez écrit que était un tout petit soirée voyage comme je suis à tes filles. And she spread her arms to show her elegant gray lace-trimmed dress tied slightly below the breast with broad ribbons. Soyez tranquilles, vous serez toujours la plus jolie, Anna Pavlovna replied. Vous savez, mon mari m'a abandonné, she went on in the same tone, turning to a general. Il va se faire tout. Dis-moi pourquoi cette vilaine gueule, she said to Prince Vasily, and not waiting for an answer, turned to Prince Vasily's daughter, the beautiful Hélène. Quelle délicieuse personne que cette petite princesse, Prince Vasily said to Anna Pavlovna. Soon after the little princess came, a massive fat young man with a cropped head, in spectacles, light-colored trousers of the latest fashion, a high jabot, and a brown tailcoat. This fat young man was the illegitimate son of a famous courtier from Catherine's time, Count Bezukhov, who was now dying in Moscow. He did not serve anywhere yet. He had only just arrived from abroad where he had been educated, and this was his first time in society. Anna Pavlovna greeted him with a nod reserved for people of the lowest hierarchy in her salon. But despite this greeting of the lowest sort, at the sight of the entering Pierre, uneasiness and fear showed in Anna Pavlovna's face, like that expressed at the sight of something all too enormous and unsuited to the place. Though Pierre was indeed somewhat larger than the other men in the room, this fear could have referred only to the intelligent, at the same time shy, observant, and natural gaze which distinguished him from everyone else in the drawing-room. C'est bien amiable à vous, Monsieur Pierre, d'être venu voir un pauvre malade, Anna Pavlovna said to him, exchanging fearful looks with the aunt to whom she was bringing him. Pierre burbled something incomprehensible and went on searching for something with his eyes. He smiled joyfully, merrily, bowed to the little princess as to a close acquaintance, and went up to the aunt. Anna Pavlovna's fear was not in vain, because Pierre, without hearing out the aunt's talk about Her Majesty's health, walked away from her. The frightened Anna Pavlovna stopped him with the words, "You don't know about the Abbé Moreau? He's a very interesting man," she said. "Yes, I've heard about his plan for eternal peace, and it's very interesting, but hardly possible." "You think so?" said Anna Pavlovna, in order to say something, and again turned to her duties as mistress of the house. But Pierre committed the reverse discourtesy. Earlier he had walked away upon hearing out a lady who was talking to him. Now he held with his conversation to a lady who needed to leave him. Lowering his head and spreading his big feet, he began to explain to Anna Pavlovna why he thought that the abbe's plan was a chimera. "We'll talk later," Anna Pavlovna said, smiling. And ridding herself of the young man who did not know how to live, she returned to her duties as mistress of the house and went on listening and looking out, ready to come to the rescue at any point where the conversation lagged. As the owner of a spinning mill, having put his workers in their places, strolls about the establishment, watching out for an idle spindle or the odd one squealing much too loudly, and hastens to go and slow it down or start it up at the proper speed. So Anna Pavlovna strolled about her drawing room, going up to a circle that had fallen silent or was too talkative, and with one word or rearrangement set the conversation machine running evenly and properly again. But amidst all these cares, there could still be seen in her a special fear for Pierre. She glanced at him concernedly when he went over to listen to what was being talked about around Montmartre, and went on to another circle where the abbe was talking. For Pierre, brought up abroad, this soiree of Anna Pavlovna's was the first he had seen in Russia. He knew that all the intelligentsia of Petersburg was gathered here, and like a child in a toy shop, he looked everywhere at once. He kept fearing to miss intelligent conversations that he might have listened to. Looking at the self-assured and elegant expressions on the faces gathered here, he kept expecting something especially intelligent. Finally, he went up to Morio. The conversation seemed interesting to him, and he stopped, waiting for a chance to voice his thoughts, as young people like to do. Part 3. Or Section 3. Sorry. Anna Pavlovna's soiree got going. The spindles on all sides hummed evenly and ceaselessly. Besides ma tante, next to whom sat only one elderly lady with a thin, weepy face, somewhat alien to this brilliant company, the company had broken up into 3 circles. In one, mostly masculine, the center was the abbe. In another, of young people. It was the beautiful Princess Helene, Prince Vasily's daughter, and the pretty red-cheeked little Princess Bolkonsky, too plump for her age. In the third, it was Montmartre and Anna Pavlovna. The Viscount was a nice-looking young man with soft features and manners, obviously regarded himself as a celebrity, but, from good breeding, modestly allowed himself to be made use of by the company in which he found himself. Anna Pavlovna was obviously treating her guest to him. As a good maître d'hôtel presents as something supernaturally excellent a piece of beef one would not want to eat if one saw it in the dirty kitchen, so that evening Anna Pavlovna served up to her guests first the Vicomte, then the Abbé, as something supernaturally refined. In Montmartre circles, the conversation turned at once to the murder of the Duc d'Enghien. The Vicomte said that the Duc d'Enghien had perished from his own magnanimity, and that there were special reasons for Bonaparte's viciousness. Ah, voyons, Comtesse non c'est la Vicomte, said Anna Pavlovna, joyfully sensing that something à la Louis XV echoed in this phrase. Comtesse non c'est la Vicomte. The Vicomte bowed as a sign of submission and smiled politely. Anna Pavlovna circled around the Vicomte and invited everyone to listen to his story. Le Vicomte a été personnellement connu de monsieur, Anna Pavlovna whispered to one. Le Vicomte est un parfait conteur, she said to another. Comme on voit l'homme de la bonne compagnie, she said to a third, and the Vicomte was presented to the company in a most refined and advantageous light, like a roast beef on a hot platter sprinkled with herbs. The Vicomte was just about to begin his story and smiled subtly. Come over here, chère Hélène, Anna Pavlovna said to the beautiful princess, who was sitting some way off, forming the center of another circle. Princess Hélène was smiling. She got up with the same unchanging smile of a perfectly beautiful woman with which she had entered the drawing room. Lightly rustling her white ball gown trimmed with ivy and moss, her white shoulders gleaming, her hair and diamonds shining, she walked straight on between the parted men, not looking at anyone but smiling to everyone, as if kindly granting each of them the right to admire the beauty of her figure, of her full shoulders, of her very exposed bosom and back, as the fashion then was, and as if bringing with her the brilliance of a ball, approached Anna Pavlovna. Hélène was so good-looking that there was not only not a trace of coquetry to be seen in her, but on the contrary, it was as if she was embarrassed by her unquestionable and all too strongly and triumphantly effective beauty. It was as if she wished but was unable to diminish the effect of her beauty. Quelle belle personne, said everyone who saw her, as if struck by something extraordinary. The Vicomte shrugged his shoulders and lowered his eyes while she was seating herself before him and shining upon him that same unchanging smile. Madame, je crains pas mes moyens devant un bel auditeur, he said, inclining his head with a smile. The princess rested the elbow of her bare, rounded arm on a little table and did not find it necessary to say anything. She waited, smiling. Throughout the story, she sat erect, glancing occasionally now at her rounded, beautiful arm lying lightly on the table, now at the still more beautiful bosom on which she straightened a diamond necklace. She also straightened the folds of her gown several times, and when the story produced an impression, turned to look at Anna Pavlovna and at once assumed the same expression as on the maid of honor's face, and then settled back into a radiant smile. After Hélène, the little princess also came over from the tea table. Attendez-moi, je vais prendre mon ouvrage, she said. Voyons à que pensez-vous? She turned to Prince Hippolyte. Apportez-moi mon réticule. The princess, smiling and talking with everyone, suddenly effected the transposition and taking a seat, cheerily settled herself. Now I feel good, she said several times, and asking them to begin, started to work. Prince Hippolyte fetched her reticule, came after her, and moving his chair towards her, sat down close by. Le charmant Hippolyte was striking in his extraordinary resemblance to his beautiful sister, and still more in being strikingly unattractive despite that resemblance. The features of his face were the same as his sister's, but in her everything was lit up by her joyous, self-contented, young, unchanging smile and the extraordinary classical beauty of her body. In her brother, on the contrary, the same face was clouded by idiocy and invariably expressed a self-assured peevishness, and his body was skinny and weak. His eyes, nose, and mouth all seemed to shrink into an indefinite and dull grimace. His arms and legs were always assumed an unnatural position. Ce n'est pas une histoire des revenants, he said, sitting down near the princess and hastily fixing a lorgnette to his eyes, as if he was unable to start talking without this instrument. Mais non, mon cher, the surprised storyteller said, shrugging his shoulders. C'est que je déteste les histoires de revenants, said Prince Hippolyte in such a tone that it was clear he had said these words and only then understood what they meant. Because of the self-assurance with which he spoke, no one could make out whether what he had said was very clever or very stupid. He was wearing a dark green tailcoat, trousers the color of sus de nymphe effraie, and as he said himself, stockings and shoes. The Vicomte told very nicely that the then current anecdote that the Duc d'Enghien had secretly gone to Paris to meet with Mademoiselle Georges, and that there he met Bonaparte, who also enjoyed the famous actress's favors, and that there, having met the Duke, Napoleon happened to fall into one of those faints he was prone to and found himself in the Duke's power, which the Duke did not take advantage of, and that Bonaparte afterwards revenged himself for this magnanimity with the Duke's death. The story was very nice and interesting, especially the moment when the rivals suddenly recognized each other, and the ladies, it seemed were stirred. Charmant, said Anna Pavlova, looking questioningly at the little princess. Charmant, whispered the little princess, sticking the needle into her work as if to signify that the interest and charm of the story kept her from going on working. The Vicomte appreciated this silent praise and smiled gratefully, began to go on, but at that moment Anna Pavlovna, who kept glancing at the young man she found so frightening, noticed that his conversation with the abbe was much too loud and vehement, and she rushed to the rescue at the place of danger. Indeed, Pierre had managed to strike up a conversation with the abbe about political balance, and the abbe, obviously intrigued by the young man's simple-hearted vehemence, was developing his favorite idea before him. The two men listened and talked too animatedly and naturally, and it was this that Anna Pavlovna did not like. The means are European balance and the droit de gêne, the abbot was saying. Let a powerful state like Russia, famous for its barbarism, stand disinterestedly at the head of a union having at its purpose the balance of Europe, and it will save the world. How are you going to find such a balance? Pierre began, but just then Anna Pavlovna came over and with a stern glance at Pierre, asked the Italian how he was taking the local climate. The Italian's face suddenly changed and acquired an insultingly false sweetness of expression, which was probably habitual with him in conversations with women. I'm so enchanted with the charms of the intelligence and cultivation of society, especially the women's, where I have had the happiness to be received, that I have not yet had the time to think about the climate, he said. Not letting go of the abbé and Pierre, Anna Pavlovna, the better to keep an eye on them, joined them to the general circle. Just then a new person entered the drawing room. This person was the young Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, the little princess's husband. Prince Bolkonsky was of medium height, a rather handsome young man with well-defined and dry features. Everything in his figure, from his weary, bored gaze to his quiet, measured gait, presented the sharpest contrast with his small, lively wife. Obviously, he not only knew everyone in the drawing room, but was so sick of them that it was very boring for him to look at them and listen to them. Of all the faces he found so boring, the face of his pretty wife seemed to be the one he was most sick of. With a grimace that spoiled his handsome face, he turned away from her. He kissed Anna Pavlovna's hand and, narrowing his eyes, looked around at the whole company. Vous vous enrôlez pas la guerre, mon prince, said Anna Pavlovna. Le général Kutuzov, said Bolkonsky, emphasizing the last syllable. Zoff, like a Frenchman. A bien voulu de moi pour aide de camp. At least votre femme, she'll go to the country. Shame on you to deprive us of your lovely wife. André, said his wife, addressing her husband in the same coquettish tone in which she addressed others, what a story the Vicomte told us about Mademoiselle Georges and Bonaparte. Prince André closed his eyes and turned away. Pierre, who had not taken his joyful, friendly eyes off Prince André since he entered the drawing room, went up to him and took his arm. Prince André, without turning around, wrinkled his face into a grimace, expressing vexation at whoever had taken his arm, but seeing Pierre's smiling face, suddenly smiled an unexpectedly kind and pleasant smile. Well, well, so you too are in high society, he said to Pierre. I knew you'd be here, Pierre replied. I'll come to you for supper, he added softly, so as not to interfere with the Vicomte who was going on with his story. May I? No, you may not, Prince André said, laughing, letting Pierre know by the pressure of his hand that there was no need to ask. He was about to say more, but just then Prince Vasily and his daughter rose, and the men stood up to let them pass. You will excuse me, my dear Vicomte, said Prince Vasily to the Frenchman, gently pulling him down on his chair by the sleeve so that he would not stand up. This unfortunate fit at the ambassador's deprives me of my pleasure and interrupts you. I'm very sorry to leave your delightful soiree, he said to Anna Pavlovna. His daughter, Princess Helene, lightly holding the folds of her gown, walked between the chairs, and the smile shone still more brightly on her beautiful face. Pierre looked with enraptured, almost frightened eyes at this beauty as she walked past him. Very good-looking, said Prince André. Very, said Pierre. Passing by, Prince Vasily seized Pierre by the hand and turned to Anna Pavlovna. Educate this bear for me, he said. He's been living with me for a month, and this is the first time I've seen him in society. Nothing is so necessary for a young man as the company of intelligent women. And that's probably as good a place as any to stop. Great finishing line. Nothing is so necessary for a young man as the company of intelligent women. Well, that's been section 2 and segment 3 in part 1, volume 1, part 1 of War and Peace. Again, I'm going to try to do this around between 3 and 4 most weekdays. So check the channel. I'll post a little bit on Facebook to remind people, and I won't do it tomorrow or Sunday, but I'll return again on Monday. I appreciate those who joined, mostly my mom, but that's great. At least she gets to hear me reading aloud. And very supportive, so thanks, Mom. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment on the video. I will continue to try to look up some of the French beforehand if I can, or some of the spelling of names so we get them said right. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Please continue to stay safe. If you're going out, make sure you're wearing masks. And if you choose to wear gloves, make sure that when you do something, you take your gloves off before you touch all the rest of your stuff, or be sure to wash your hands very thoroughly, or your gloves. Remember, it's about cross-contamination, so just use your common sense, use the intelligent mind we all have, and just continue to stay safe. And let's see, I got some comments. My mom, who is saying she will help me with the French. Yes, because she studied French and I didn't. So all to her and all the rest of my French-speaking friends, I'll probably be hitting you guys up for a little help. Thanks everybody again. Have a great Friday. Stay safe.